good to be with you on this Friday. We have gotten through another week. Things certainly keep changing, and we're thankful for God's blessings this last week and more open opportunities for us. And yet, there is still the danger for us as believers to be frustrated by what is going on around us. And it can really affect our lives and can affect God's ability to use us if we do not respond to what's going on in our area and in our country properly. Many believers find themselves reacting to circumstances, and those circumstances quench the working of the Spirit in their hearts. Now, circumstances never have to do that, because the Spirit of God can be in control every moment that we allow Him to. No one can ever take away the power of God out of our life. Nobody can take away our peace. We're the one that takes it away by reacting improperly. And I'm afraid right now, as the situation across America is unfolding, that for us as believers, we can see a lot of things that are at stake. Now, I've brought this up a couple of times as a warning, and I'm doing this again because we're entering into a whole new phase within our country. The whole political situation is coming to the surface. We're seeing the clash between secular thinking and biblical thinking. We're seeing a number of decisions that are being made that trouble us. And though we need to be informed, we need to understand what's going on, we need to make appropriate decisions, we must not let it, though, affect our spirit. And I've seen that happen so often. I've seen Christians rise up and want to see things become right and not have God's power. You see, the arm of the flesh will fail us. It's got to be God that does it. And I've got a great passage to give you, 2 Corinthians chapter 10. The Apostle Paul had to deal with his dilemma that he was facing there in that church. He was being attacked. He was being improperly dealt with. He was being slandered. And yet we see that this did not stop the apostle from having an effective ministry right on till the end of his life, and even a powerful ministry here to these people there at Corinth. And he gives us the key. He just unlocks his heart in 2 Corinthians chapter 10 and helps us understand how we can protect ourselves. And verse 3 says, "For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh." Folks, God is in control, and any battle that's going to be won has got to be spiritual. So we cannot react carnally to the worldly, satanic attacks that are around us or at us. You see, we can stay right with God even when everything else doesn't make sense and we're suffering because of it. And it goes on to say, the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. We've got to be so careful as Christians. We can't react carnally, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. You see, God can change the equation in a moment. It's a spiritual matter. The big equation is us keeping our hearts right. But then, verse 5, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God. God can bring those things down and bring into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. See, the Apostle Paul knew that if he would do right, God would work in those folks' hearts, and he'd change the equation, and that God would continue to move the church of Corinth forward, and it did. And because of his trust in the Lord, and not allowing himself to become bitter, frustrated, resentful, but instead to have the sweet trust that God was working and the Holy Spirit was working in their hearts, he could then keep his heart free. Now, friends, we've got to be informed, but we've also got to be prayer warriors. It's going to be the result of prayer that will bring down the strongholds in our country, the strongholds in our community. We're seeing a lot of things exposed, and we as believers have the best opportunity we've ever had to see the Lord work. But I am very afraid that many believers are going to be all bound up in frustration and allowing their lives to be unhappy because they are reacting rather than trusting and realizing we don't war after the flesh. We've got the Spirit of God. And if we'll be right and keep the sweet spirit of God's peace within our soul, the fruit of the Spirit working, and to have a heart of intercession, of love, even for leaders that bother us and decisions they make, if we will realize we can trust the Lord, and even in the midst of very difficult times, Paul was under the reign of Nero at the time, and yet he could trust the Lord, and so can we. So don't let anyone take away your joy. Don't let the circumstances take away your peace. Instead, get along with the Lord. Trust Him. Make your battle a spiritual one, and keep your heart right. And friends, if we do, God's going to do a great work in the days ahead.